And welcome to the Sovereign Sphere podcast. I'm Carla Treadway, and I have with me today Ryan Matta. Welcome to the show.
Carla, thanks so much for having me. Super excited to be here.
Pleasure's all mine. I was so thrilled to meet you at the event that we were both at Reclaiming Health and Sovereignty in El Salvador, and you were new to me. I was blown away by your story, the work that you're doing. I'm so glad to have found you. You're an independent journalist, a truth seeker like myself. For the folks that maybe don't know who you are, who is Ryan? What kind of work are you doing?
So it all started probably about 4 years ago when I got into YouTube. And I had been, in 2015, I was one of the first people teaching people how to mine Ethereum on YouTube back when ETH was like $2.65. Looking back, obviously I should have been mining Bitcoin, but we all make those mistakes. And so I was big into the crypto space back when nobody was really, when there was just a few. There wasn't the Michael Saylors, and there might have been Robert Breedlove's kind of in the shadows somewhere, but like we didn't know. Like, not your keys, not your crypto really wasn't even a saying back then, because like we didn't have all the options that we had today. So just a humble Bitcoiner. And I thought that that's where my career would take me, is just stacking sats and making videos on Bitcoin and crypto at the time. And then in 2022, I put out a video of Andrew Tate, just a 1 minute short video. It wasn't even a minute, it was like 48 seconds of Andrew Tate talking about why buying Bitcoin is a better investment than buying a house. And then they went on the whole, we're going to remove Andrew Tate from the face of the internet thing. And I got swept up in it. My video got labeled as violent and dangerous content. They demonetized my channel. And at the time I was kind of spotlighting at a convention called CPAC. It's like the largest political convention. At the time, I wanted nothing to do with politics. If you talked about Trump or Biden in my live streams, I would have kicked you out. I wanted nothing to do with it. And then I was filming for the Trump rally or the Trump speech at CPAC. And at 6:45, my phone started blowing up, and it was all my subscribers on YouTube telling me that they demonetized my channel. And at 7:03, I walked out of the door, and the company of LFA, the owner, was like, "Hey, our audience loved you. I covered a spot because one of the girls called off that day. And like, you needed somebody to fill the show. Like, you do a crypto show, just do a show on politics and talk about Trump." I'm like, okay. And jumped on there and just, shot the shit with the audience and had a good time. And the audience liked me, and he offered me a job. I was like, well, I just lost all my income. I might as well take some more income to stack some more sats. So I might as well do it. And I did it. And the first week on the job, a whistleblower came forward telling me that our government was running the world's largest child trafficking network. And then the story was so crazy. After the interview ended, I ended up staying for another 2 hours and doing another 2 hours worth of interviews with them off, not live. So that way I could pre-record them to hear the story, because I just couldn't believe what I was hearing. And the horror story, just did it for eight years under both, previously under the Trump administration, when the migrant children would arrive at our border, because once an unaccompanied child arrives at the border, you can't just turn them away and say like, we have, so our government takes physical possession of the child and they become property of the United States government the second they step foot on US soil without a parent. So that kind of led to him basically reunifying children. We had DNA testing in place. So if a parent said, hey, we got separated by the cartels and we both made it to the border. I need to try to locate my son. Have you guys seen him? And they take all the information, and they do DNA testing. When the DNA test matches, they'll reunify the child with the parent. Under the Trump administration, that's kind of how it was. He says you travel across the country and meet them at whatever airport that was closest to them. And, he's like, when you deliver a kid to a mother, it was like fireworks, right? It was like, he's like, I almost couldn't cry as a man, because, the child hasn't seen their mother in weeks or months or sometimes even a year. And then all of a sudden it's like, mom, and the 5-year-old girl's running through the airport, screaming, crying, jumping, super excited. And he went from that to guys not even smiling, no hugs, just basically taking the child by the hand and just, thank you, and just walking off. And the kid just looking over its shoulder like, are you going to save me?
Whoa.
And he's like, so quickly I kind of realized what was happening under the Biden administration. But they were so financially incentivized, these NGOs. These people went from working in border towns where you might get a job at a gas station for minimum wage if you're lucky, or you're working on a farm out in the heat in 100-degree weather, 12 hours a day for $10 an hour, and to going to making $18, $20 an hour, up to $26 an hour, plus unlimited overtime, unlimited double time. All of your expenses are paid. He's like, so we'd fly so much, and all those flyer miles are going onto your account. So after a week, you basically have enough flyer miles to travel anywhere in the world that you want for free. So tons of perks, insurance, benefits, and you get to travel and see the world. So after you drop a kid off in Michigan, your flight might not be out for another 12 hours or until the next day. So then they pay for your hotel, and you can go out and party or do whatever you want. So they get all these younger kids, they give them ungodly amounts of money, and they're kind of just a don't ask, don't tell system. And that in coordination with what DHS and HHS did was their public-private partnerships with these NGOs. So on day one, the Biden administration signed 93 executive orders and completely obliterated every immigration policy that Trump put into place to make it much more difficult for children to arrive at the border without parents. They'd have to claim asylum in the closest country to them, and all these great policies that any president who wants sovereignty and wants to keep their borders closed and have a fair and free, or not a fair and free, but a fair immigration policy and an enforced immigration policy. Those are the policies that you'd want to have in place. And Biden got rid of all of them. And within it was like 2 months of the Biden administration, our government already took physical possession of 20,000 children. And then they're supposed to put them into a system. Then while the children are in that system, they're supposed to be vetting the adult that they're giving them to. And then they're supposed to be making sure that kid's going to a safe environment. And they basically ripped off all the guardrails and lost 20,000 children within the first 60 days of the Biden administration. That was when I didn't first start catching wind of it then. The story didn't break about the 85,000 children yet. So I was flying down to Texas to drone these facilities. So the kid after the interview was like, hey, you can come down to Texas, I can show you. I'm like, you mean tell me you come down to Texas, you can take me to a building where there's kidnapped migrant children in it, and that are being funded with our tax dollars, and the kids are getting abused inside in these environments? He's like, oh yeah, absolutely. So I can't take you into them, but I can take you to the building or to the perimeter, and the security will show up. One of them was a Walmart that they converted into one of these migrant processing facilities for the children. There was 12,000 boys between the ages of 0 and 18 inside this Walmart. And I couldn't believe it. And then the next one he took me to, we had to get there at about 4 a.m. And they have these privacy fences. So they have like a wood fence that goes all the way around. And then top of the wood fence, they'll have like another 6-foot chain link fence, but it has the black privacy, a masking tape / fabric around the outside of the fence. So you can't really see through it unless you get up really close and you're kind of looking through it. Or maybe you lift up a little bit of an edge and can kind of see through the cracks. But next to that, there's an RV rental, like an RV campground. So we're able to get into the RV campground, get a site. And then from there, I was able to set up my drone and then get my drone up. And then at dawn, at right as the sun's coming up over the horizon, just enough light to see, the gates will open and in will come these vans and these buses and these trucks. And then the camp workers go from hut to hut to hut to hut to hut. They have like these little mini apartment type things, not even apartments, like single story, I don't know, like studios, if you will, just all these pre-built, pre-manufactured homes where they're keeping all these children. There's like 8 or 9 kids in each home, and there was just 50 or 100 of these things. And the counselors would go door to door to door because the kids aren't allowed to leave their unit without supervision. So the supervisor would come and get the kids that were getting trafficked that day. They would take them to the front of the facility. They'd go through the processing. Then they would get on the bus and they'd take them to the buses. And the buses would go to the airport. And the NGOs would take the children off the bus, get on the airplane, fly with them to wherever they were going. And then at whatever airport that they were meeting, they said buyer at, if you will. I call them buyer. I don't think that they were sponsors. I don't think that they were parents or relatives. Obviously not, 350,000 of them disappeared. So that's how that all went. We went from just, kind of learning about how they were operating to understanding how they were going to the airports, then understanding if we could get somebody back on the inside. And my buddy Carlos went back undercover to work at one of these facilities so he could actually get us the exact time of when they were getting dropped off at what airport. My buddy Anthony Rubin from Muckrakers was able to go and sit in baggage claim undercover. And then when the kids showed up and got handed over to the guy, he followed the guy back to the house, and he did that 4 times. 3 out of the 4 times, they took him to an address where a man was currently registered or living at that had aggravated sexual assault charges on his record or pending sexual assault charges on his record. So our government was authorizing the delivery of children to a grown man that was living at a home where either he or somebody else living in that home had aggravated sexual assault charges. And that was just 3 of the 4. Randomly, out of thousands that we could have went to, the first 4, 3 out of the 4 were that. And the 4th environment, the home was so bad, he's like, you wouldn't let your kid go over there for a birthday party on a play date if you were supervising the play date. That's how bad of a neighborhood it was that they were delivering these kids to. Then a whistleblower came forward as well with 8,000 addresses. And out of those 8,000 addresses, I think we got through the first 100 or 1,000 at best before we started finding that kids were getting delivered to men that had provided an address of a strip club. So they had fake IDs made. And for whatever reason, the person that put the address on the ID put the address of a strip club. And then, our government did a Google Earth search to make sure that it was a safe environment for some reason and didn't catch that it was a strip club, and then authorized the delivery of a child. Not to the strip club, but to the airport baggage claim. And then the man was supposed to be taking the child to the strip club.
So with very little effort on your end, you were able to trace who are the actual caregivers of these children. Not no effort, but it's not like all they had to do was follow them. All they had to do was go to the address in order to find out that these people were predators. Now, this facility, this Walmart-like facility, is this registered as a facility for taking care of children? Is this whole thing off the books? What does that look like?
Oh, it's all on the books. Every bit of it, every piece of information, every address that we delivered one of these children to, that address was provided to HHS and registered in the child's file as his sponsor. So, there's all these 350,000 missing children. It should have been all hands on deck. In my personal opinion, we should have pulled back our gosh damn troops out of all these countries that we shouldn't be in. We should have deployed the National Guard in every state and every city to go door to door to door to every single one of these addresses with an in-hand DNA test and force the DNA test of the parent and the child immediately on the spot. Or you can come to the station and do it with us, either one that you would like, but you need to have this DNA test done immediately. We need to determine if you have any relationship to this child or not. And if you don't, then we're taking this child back. It was the most disgusting, horrific. It's all on the books, every detail, every penny, every address. There were so many. So at these facilities, mainly they were called Southwest Key Programs. They're Southwest Key Programs, MVM Inc., Endeavors. But Southwest Key Programs was one of the largest. I think they had facilities that held up to 35,000 children all across America in like 35 states. Walmart was one of the biggest ones at 1,200 capacity. And there was so many children getting sexually abused by the employees, by the staff at these facilities, that Merrick Garland and his DOJ had to open a lawsuit against Southwest Key Programs. It was a massive lawsuit. If I were to read, I could pull it up on the computer, but that'll probably get your videos wiped off YouTube. But if I just read the reports, just word for word, verbatim, what's in those reports, it would take me 30 minutes just in that one file on that one charges. And that was, I think they stopped counting those charges in 2022 or 2020. Yeah, 2021 or 2022 was the most recent charge in that file. So that's not even counting what happened in the most recent 3 years to these children inside these facilities. It's horrific. Some of the stories are so bad. Some of the girls were reporting it via passing a note to the teacher one day when they knew one of the staff at the facility was out of town on vacation. So she was getting sexually abused by one of the staff members, by one of the employees who was like 19 or 20 years old. I think she was 11 or 12. And she wrote a note to the teacher and handed it to the teacher and said that this was what this man was doing to me.
So what did you do when you discovered this? Are these facilities still open? Did you report this to the government? Like what happened then?
You think, I wasn't just fresh off the Bitcoin tracks, right? So I'm no journalist, but I'm thinking like, journalists who break stories like this, they get things like Pulitzer surprises, like this is some Nazi Germany, the craziest thing you've ever heard. And I came back and I instantly got on Redacted, got on InfoWars, got on every big podcast that I could. And it was like almost like a fart in church. Like people looked around and were like, what was that? Oh, okay, on to the next thing. We had the election season, we had the Biden administration, we had the invasion taking place. It was like there was so much chaos that no matter how much attention I gave to this story, it wasn't enough. And that's kind of what led into the documentaries, right? Because I was like, I try to have these conversations one-on-one, and maybe 100 or 200 people in your podcast are like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. But until you see the machine and you see how it operates and you see it right in your face, you're just like, oh my God, this was happening here in America. And that's why my new documentary that's coming out on today, Monday, just dropped, is called Never in America. Because people say it all the time, that would never happen in America, right? Oh, that would, and it's happening right here in our backyard. And we're all completely oblivious to it. Or maybe we kind of know, but we don't really know. If that makes sense. You kind of have a feeling something's not right here, and you're just looking around and then you start to realize like none of this was by accident, right? Me and JJ, my partner, when we first started filming the first documentary on child trafficking, it was actually on the invasion. And it was going to be called What is Treason? #invaded. And we were going to travel across America to all the invasion hotspots. We're going to go down to Texas to show you. We're going to go to Arizona. We're going to go to California. We're going to go to where they were dumping them in Chicago, into New York, right? Into Colorado with the Venezuelans taking over the hotels, right? We went to all those hotspots. And in the process of doing that, the first trip we went was California. And JJ, my partner at the time, he'd been Border Patrol for 24 years. So he's 6'4". Dad was Secret Service under Reagan. He is like your All-American football quarterback, almost went pro, college level athlete, rock star of a guy, great father, better husband. Like he is your All-American dude, right? And he's just one hell of a guy. And so he had been Border Patrol for so long, he ended up resigning under Biden because he had 3 more years before he could have topped out and been at the highest level in Border Patrol. He was like one rung below that. And he just started getting the orders. He's like, I'm not going to carry out these treasonous orders under this administration. I'm going to start speaking out against it. I don't want to lose my pension and everything, so I'm just going to retire. Retired. But he was so well respected for the job that he did in Border Patrol. When he needed a favor, it was just a phone call away. Hey, we're making this documentary. Can you get us this? I'd been to the border about 7 times at that time. I couldn't even get to talk with the Border Patrol agent. We pull up to this station. We're getting inside their Border Patrol station. We're getting ride-alongs along the border. I'm in no man's land. So there's these double border wall Trump built in his first administration. So you have Tijuana border wall, then you have this gap, and it's about a football field wide, and then you have the American side border wall. So they have to jump over 2 border walls, and then they have ground sensors and night vision inside these. And when JJ's like, if a migrant jumped over that wall, like they weren't going to make it across that football field before we had units on them. We had ground sensors, night vision. It was like the second when me and JJ went there, There were migrants by the thousands camped out inside no man's land, just waiting to make the final cross, or waiting for a call from the NGO, or waiting for their asylum claim. It was like they had their own camp, their NGOs set up in there, passing out water, food, blankets. It was like the migrants had everything that they needed to make this invasion happen. And after that, after hearing two more whistleblowers that came forward, I can't give the names out, but these were higher level people up in the government. I started to look at this and going, okay, this wasn't just an invasion. This wasn't just the Biden administration opening our borders and just letting things happen as they came. It was a full-scale military operation being carried out by every level of our government with the sole intention of collapsing civilization in America. Like, we could all see the writing on the walls at the rate that it was happening under the Biden administration. We were taking 10,000 migrants a day, and we were putting them on social welfare, Social Security, food stamps, government assistance, free healthcare, free medical, free dental, free daycare. They were taking jobs from American citizens. And that was just with the weight of 30 million illegal immigrants that came across that border. So imagine.
Hotel, phone, same thing happening in Canada. We actually just found out here that in order to get refugee status, you come over, you just say, I want refugee status. You fill out an application, you just click a couple boxes, and then they just let you in. No screening, none.
In
That's
McAllen,
insane.
Texas, we were watching migrants like literally invade the country, come across that border, get put onto a bus, shipped to a processing facility. Hours later, with the paperwork in hand, they were getting delivered right to McAllen Airport. And then once they got to McAllen Airport, it's a smaller airport, so they have like just the one metal detector that you go through in the baggage claim. And then they would show up with their folder, and it says like, I don't speak English, I need some assistance or whatever. They would see that manila folder. They would escort them around the security points and put them right onto a plane with you, without searching, without doing anything, any screening. They were putting them onto planes and just flying them all across America. We didn't have a terrorist attack. I don't know how that was possible. Like, I cannot believe any country, like if you were an enemy of America and you saw that happen, even if you were an ally, you would have a full military on the ground here in America. It's mathematically impossible to think. They could have moved hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands, millions even of soldiers. Like, if you're the Chinese Communist Party and you want to go to war with America, you wouldn't hit us from the outside. You already have your full-scale military right here, boots on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And you're giving them citizenship. You're giving them the legal right to buy weapons. So you could literally have standing armies, fully armed, right here, right now on USA soil. And in the drop of a button, they could act. So there's 16 power grids all across America, right? This is one of the high-level whistleblowers we interviewed. And he's like, okay, basically told me at the time, he goes, there's no way they're going to let Trump back in the White House. He thought they were going to kill him. And he goes, when they tried to, right? Like, I mean, everything this guy was saying was going to happen basically happened outside of this last key part. And that would have been when they took out Trump. And I think they were planning to do that at Butler. So he said, you shouldn't even finish this documentary because it's not going to make the impact and it's not going to change anything. He goes, you should remember the rule of threes. He goes, your brain can go 3 minutes without oxygen and you're dead. You can go 3 hours out in cold environments or harsh environments without proper attire and you're dead. He goes, you can go 3 days without water and you're dead. You can go 30 days without food and you're dead. He goes, if you live within 5 miles of any major interstate or within 15 miles of any major city, and you don't get out of that perimeter within the first 24 hours of this attack, you will wind up in the 33% of the population that's dead within the first 30 days. So that meaning there's 16 power grids all across America that a single migrant with a long rifle, the right bullet to this generator would destroy it. And if you destroyed these, they're the size of a house and they're only manufactured in Germany and China. So when you take them down, they don't keep an extra, $1 million backup generator on standby that's the size of a house, just sitting there getting rusty and going old because these things run for 10 or 20, 30 years, however long they run for. He goes, so this isn't something you just have a backup part for. And if it went down and you took them all simultaneously, you would create chaos. I mean, talk about no helicopters, no ambulances, no energy. And then you do it in the middle of a summer in New York City after you've let, 5 million illegal immigrants that are the most hardened criminal gangbangers, thugs, in the world. They came from war-torn areas. War is normal for them. Living in chaos is absolutely where they thrive at. And then you shut off power in New York City in the middle of the summer. And imagine the smell and the stench inside those skyscrapers when every toilet's backed up. There's no running water. There's no electricity. Everything in your food, everything in your fridge is expiring. Then what are you going to do? Throw it out? And then all the trash is out in the streets. And then the rats are coming out from everywhere. And then people are peeing and pooping out in the streets. And imagine how quickly within a week, what New York City would look like. It would be absolute effing chaos. And the gangs would rule supreme, and the most evil and violent people would become the most powerful people in the country, in the city, in the state.
I work in the online marketing space, and whenever I've had people in the past thinking about shifting from a physical business to online, we start talking about online income people will say things like, well, what if the like electrical grid goes down? To which I always say, do you live in a city? It's
Yep.
the wrong question. If that is a concern of yours and you still live in a city, you don't live in the forest like me, don't worry about money. That's like the least of your problems.
Yep. That's my favorite Bitcoin question. They go, what are you going to do if the power goes down? And I go, I'm taking your shit. They go, excuse me? I go, I have a gun, I have bigger muscles, and I'm more fucking dangerous than you are. I'm taking your shit.
Yeah.
And I'll figure out how fucking when the next generator comes on, I'll be back to mining my Bitcoin with all your shit. So thanks.
Okay. So you find these facility obviously there's more and more kids being poured into it with this influx of immigration, like we're just drowning in it, in the States, in Canada. You said it's not hidden, they have the addresses, so either they really don't care and they're too busy, they're not looking, or they're part of it. I'm curious how long you think that this has been going on. Is this both the left and the right participating in the system? You said like it primarily got worse when Biden was in control. We saw that over here in Canada as well. But is this everyone is corrupt? Is this one side more than the other?
Can I share my screen?
Sure.
Okay, so what you're looking at here, this is UACs by state, right? And you can see all the years that we have checked here. You can go year by year, state by state. So if I just scroll down here to the very bottom of this list, oops. So in 2024, we took 99,326 minor children. Those are children that arrived at our border without parents. Actually, let me zoom in on this so your audience can see it even better. Oh yeah, look at that. There we go. Okay, so here's 2023. We took 113,484 children. Now, under the Trump administration, we've only taken 25,000, and the year is almost over. And I believe if we were to break this down by month, in January, we probably took close to 10,000. So since the Trump administration has taken office, you can say that the unaccompanied migrant children that coming in this border is down by probably 80. Right, next year, it should be probably close to 90, 95%, which is a major, major accomplishment. So what the Trump has done by closing that border and by the immigration policies that he's put into place, he's drastically decreased the number of migrant children. Now, we're going to end that year, and actually, this fiscal year might be over. I think it ended in October. So that's probably the whole fiscal year. And that's probably from, if you count the fiscal year, so that's going all the way back to 2024 under Biden. So it'd be November, December, and January, which I guarantee a majority of those children came in. It's definitely was a highly Democrat. So Trump's last year in office, you see only 16,000. And you see when Trump, this is 16, 17, you got less. And then 19, something happened in 19. There must have been a surge. Oh yeah, that's when the Democrats started organizing these caravans and trying to overwhelm the Trump system. And that's when he built the 50,000 person ICE detention facilities all across America. It's like, you'd send them. We'll round them all up and we'll send them right back. And that's exactly what he was doing. And then his last year got all the way down to 16,000. So I think you're going to see this number probably next year, probably around 12,000. If I had to take just a guess out of the top of my head, maybe less, maybe more. I definitely think it'll be less than 25,000 though. And that's the Trump effect. So I think the Trump has had a massive impact on, preventing it. But the problem is that we still have missing roughly, when Trump took office, it was 350,000. On December 14th of 2024, Tom Homan told us on December 14th of 2024 that the number was 350,000 children that our government had lost. As of today, I've only heard roughly 20 to 30,000 have been rescued. Multiple have been found dead. The kids that have been rescued, they'll probably never be the same again. Some of the trauma that these little children go through is stuff that no matter. So if you pick picture the worst image you can have of a child being abused and what's being done to that child, it's what's actually being done to them is 10 times worse than you could ever imagine. Every time I hear a story, and I think I've heard the worst story, somebody else tells me another one, and it's worse than the one I heard before.
Where do you think they're going?
60% are used for labor trafficking. So there's these organizations that they're like staffing companies, and this is how Tyson and these factories get away with it. They just use a staffing company. Oh, we just used this cheapest staffing company. We didn't know that the staffing company was using minors, even though they're giving us rates that almost make it impossible for them to be profitable and provide us with labor. They were still doing it because they're using child labor. So a 14-year-old this was in the New York Times report, a 14-year-old had his arm ripped off in one of the meat packing plants and one of the Tyson chicken packing plants. These children were being brought in on the night shift, and they were being ushered out before the day shift started. And they were, using these children as labor traffickers. Some of them will be making bracelets in a basement and selling them on Etsy and eBay. There's all different types of operations. And some of the labor trafficking stories are actually worse than the child trafficking ones, the sex trafficking ones. Then 34% are being used for child sex trafficking. and sexual purposes. 6% is being used for organ harvesting, and then roughly 2% for satanic ritual abuse.
The very worst conspiracies I could possibly think of that are so out there, you think like it has to be false. All these things are coming out as true. Like when you
Everyone,
hear about like Wayfair and Walmart, you know, like you go online to order something and there's like this ridiculous price attached to an item. Is that true? These are children.
you know, it's hard to speculate on that, and our government doesn't do a very good job at releasing that information to the public. So I don't want to say anything that I don't know. I've heard those
Mhm.
exact same stories. I've never personally seen them. I've even heard of, like how when they created the last Taproot upgrade on Bitcoin allows you to engrave Satoshis. They're engraving specific codes on the Satoshis. So you take this code on the back of a Satoshi and you use like the last 4 digits and you type it into a website. And that website will be like a catalog and it'll look like a clothing store. And you see children modeling like looks like Guess clothing. And that number actually represents that child. So there's all different types of ways that they have figured out. That the guy who told me that story was actually his name's Basil Baz. He's an ex-CIA director, and he has this organization. I can't think of the name of it right now, but it rescues children from these environments, and he's rescued 1,500. He's gone after every child that he's ever gone after. So if you had like saw that your neighbor and you thought your neighbor was trafficking children, you had intel or whatever, you basically get in contact with his team. They vet your intel. When they find out it's legit, they go and they get that child by any means necessary. They'll stake it out. They have a whole team of like 20 people and operatives, and they go in. They have night vision goggles that see through walls and stuff like that. So they know where the kid is. They know where the man's in. They breach the door. They take him down and they rescue the child. They brought back everyone alive so far. He's the one who told me the story about the Satoshis. They arrested a man that was literally trafficking children. He was engraving codes onto Bitcoin, and those codes represented images on a website. Just like looks like a normal website. So they say when a child comes across that border, if he's being trafficked, and he makes it across that border and gets delivered to a buyer in America, there's less than a 1% chance you're going to ever see that child alive again. And his life expectancy goes from 72 years, whatever continent he comes from, we'll say 72 years is probably the average life expectancy here on Earth, to 24 to 36 months. The FBI, I think, will tell you 18 months. So we'll go and be a little generous, 24 to 36 months, because their poor, fragile little bodies can't sustain the extended periods of abuse for that long. So when you talk about a little girl who's being abused and she's chained in the basement, she's sold 5 to 10 times a day. Those guys don't have to wear condoms. They can do whatever they want with her. They can get rough with her. She gets riddled with STDs. She gets a broken jaw, broken fingers, broken hand. They don't take her to the doctors. She just sits there in pain and until she eventually gives way, or they sell her off to somebody else who wants to use her for more satanic purposes.
Why is it so hard to tell these stories? I know that you're making a huge effort to get this information out there. Clearly, Trump is making a huge dent in this problem. But like we saw with Sound of Freedom when that movie came out, I don't understand why that material is controversial, why it was hard to get out there. Even with this new administration, you're saying that you're still facing a ton of censorship.
Yeah,
What?
it's I'm
Yeah.
probably the most censored. I mean, you've never seen my work before, and I've put out 6 documentaries in the last year, and was pretty large in the Bitcoin community. I think I've got actually more love from the Bitcoin community on my films than I have in the political world, which is like insane to me. I'd be on every podcast. Part of it's my viewpoints on Israel, right? I'm really outspoken critic on Israel and what's happening over there and the Jewish state of Israel. So if I just stopped talking about Israel, I'd probably be, if I just worship, if I did not just stop talking about them, if I was pro-Israel, I would be one of the number one filmmakers on X. But at the end of the day, at every one of these rabbit holes, there's somehow in some way connected to somebody from Israel. And that's what always, when I'm exposing the NGOs and then the NGOs are, some way indirectly connected or their husbands connected to people in Israel, it's like, oh, I see how this operation is. I see who's making all the money. You start looking into the board of directors and who's on the board of directors of every one of these NGOs. And 7 out of 8 of them are Jewish or connected to somebody who's Jewish. And then you start to see how all this access of power, how there's very specific people who can just randomly get these roles, or they're a corrupt government employee who used to work in the government and learned a little bit too much. And to keep you quiet, we go, hey, we have this NGO that's managing the children, but we don't have a laundry service for it yet. And that laundry service, I mean, the contract's like $1 million a year. So if you got a couple of washers and dryers and somebody that can do some clothes, and you can pick up our clothes on Monday and bring them back on Friday folded, nobody's bidding on this contract. It'd be a great opportunity for you to start a business. And we actually have this grant program with this NGO that we're partnered with, and they would probably be willing to give you a grant to start up the business. But if you go become a whistleblower, I don't think that opportunity is going to be there. So we learned all this because we used AI. After my films really reached out, I had a lot of people who were like, I want to get involved. How do I help? What can I do? And one of these guys was like a genius with AI. And I'm like, can you build this thing? So this one man reached out to me because I wanted to track every penny. It built this software that goes through all of like the ad spend in our government. and he can build portfolios and track insane amounts of things. So you can see how much money you want. I want to know at the time how much money went to Guatemala over a 4-year period. And he pulled it all, had it broken down in spreadsheets, graphs, charts. It was all this beautiful. It cost me $3,000 just to have him pull all this data and organize it for me. So I had showed one of my guys, and I was like, he's like, oh, I could have built something like that for you. And I'm like, but what about going through these NGOs and let's cross-reference every NGO. Let's get a list of all the NGOs that have ever received or worked with the migrant children or been in any way working with immigration. We pulled all those NGOs, and we said, okay, let's pull the board of directors and every name on every board of directors and who's sitting on the board of directors. Okay, pulled all that, had thousands of names. Okay, now cross-reference all of those names and find out if any of those employees have ever worked or been employed inside of our government. And then it probably goes through LinkedIn and all their profiles of all these names. And it was like 89%, which is absolutely, it's like mathematically impossible, statistically probability impossible. And then you start to look at who they are and looking into these people, and you start going in their LinkedIn profiles and find out who their husband is or their wife is, or their, and everybody's connected to everybody. And that's why when I was like, I thought for sure that there's no way that Trump's not going to come in here and just roll heads. And then he came out swinging, was like USAID, basically day one, we're shutting down USAID. Doja's going after him, we're shutting him down. I'm like, and I don't think Trump realized how many of his donors and how many of his people that are directly close to them are directly tied to them. I mean, Marco Rubio was like not the director of USAID, but he was like a really powerful player. I mean, he helped overthrow the Guatemalan government and install and rig an election in Guatemala in 2023. So we know that that's like undeniable. I made a whole documentary on it. All the data's there, all the evidence, all the proof. And Mark Rubio was the one who led the charge of senators demanding that the attorney general stop the investigation into election fraud in Guatemala and allow the peaceful transition of power. The same thing they told us in 2021 when Biden was taking over. There has to be a peaceful transition of power. They had the Robert De Niro and Ellen DeGeneres and everybody get on there, and Obama and Bill Clinton and George Bush, and the peaceful transition of power, peaceful transition of power. That's like the intelligence agency's keyword for we're overthrowing your gosh damn government and you're not going to do shit about it.
Has Trump ever publicly said anything about the trafficking facilities, or does he keep it more just to the influx of immigrants?
Yeah, Trump's in my documentary for doing an interview with Fox News where they asked if he was going to go and look for these 325,000 children. And he's like, yeah, of course I will. She's like, yes, but I mean, will you publicly state that you are going to save these? And he goes, yeah, the ones that are still alive, I think most of them are dead.
Wow.
Yeah. And he wasn't kidding. I mean, we've already found dozens that have been killed and are no longer alive. And they were supposed to be in the care of the United States government. Our government took physical custody of these children. They're now winding up dead. Like, imagine if the government handed you a kid and you were responsible for it, and then a couple of years later it was dead. You'd be in prison for the rest of your life.
100%.
How is Mayorkas? How is Xavier Arbasara? How is Robin Marcos? These were the directors of these organizations that carried this out. I mean, Robin Marcos was the director of ORR. Our specific responsibility was the oversight of those facilities where I told you the kids were getting molested by the employees in. And they allowed it to happen.
Do these facilities still exist? Are they're open now?
They're still operational. Not all of them, but yeah, a lot of them. How this operation worked is, Mayorkas went over like basically day one. And we only know this because Michael Yon, an American journalist, happened to be over in Panama, and he started seeing the choppers, the Black Hawk helicopters and stuff flying in. And he's like, oh, who's that? So he pulls out his camera with his telephoto lens, and he's standing by the edge of the airport. And Mayorkas steps off the plane. There's a meeting with the Panama president and says that they're going to make a $230 million investment into the infrastructure to try to help ease the pain of the immigration, right? It's part of the immigration compact that we got in with the United Nations and all these other nations, which allowed free flow of migration from all these countries, specifically that were getting involved in this pact. So there were so many migrants coming through that they were destroying the jungles and the villages. Mayorkas basically hired a bunch of locals in Panama to cut a mile-wide path in the jungle around the village town so that the villagers could just then open up shop and basically go collect coconuts and sell coconut juice, or boat rides, or, you wanted somebody to carry your bags for that 3-mile journey or however long. You wanted somebody to carry your bags all the way to America. If you could hire somebody. I mean, there's people that were making thousands of dollars a week doing nothing but just carrying bags through the jungles for these people. Yeah, so all the infrastructure, so all along that path, he spent $230 million. So he built these ginormous migrant processing facilities. I mean, they're gorgeous, they're beautiful, they're massive. And they're in the middle of the jungles, right? They're in the Panama. And then you come in with OMI and OMI or OIM, IOM, I always forget. It's like International Operation of Migration or Migration and Immigration, whatever. This OIM and the UN are just like, they're like partners in crime. So they set these stations up basically pretty much right on the border. Like I got smuggled into Mexico. I got smuggled into Guatemala on water rafts by the Mexican cartels a couple months ago because I wanted to see where these locations were. And as soon as we got smuggled by the water rafts, you got on a little, you could pay something like $5 and you pedal, you sit in the back of a bike car and you like pedal the bike and you sit in the back on this piece of wood, And it, like maybe a quarter of a mile, half a mile into Guatemala, and you find the first OIM station. And these are the stations where they're giving you water, they're giving you plastic baggies with condoms in them, Plan B abortion pills in case you get raped. Like they were giving you gloves. Like it was disgusting. They're like, hey, it's gonna be so dangerous on your next journey. Here's basically a rape kit, so that when you get raped and sexually abused by the cartels and the traffickers, you have the ability to take care of yourself. Hey, please put this condom on if you're going to abuse me. Like it was that crazy. And so then when you get across on the Mexico side, you have another one, right? So at each country, they're basically these checkpoints and these stations where they're prepping you and preparing you, telling you how to talk to authorities in the next state. If you get stopped, here's what you say. Here's basically how you get to America. And here's the route. Here's the path. Here's the red zones where a really bad high cartel activity you want to avoid. Basically just stay with the group and you should be all right. And that's what they did. And they
So
moved.
basically, each country's processing center is just like a breeding ground for crime. It's not really helping the migrants, but then this separate like Walmart like structure where just all the kids are held.
Once it get to America. Yep. So once you get to America,
Why aren't they shutting that down? Is it because the influx is so big they still need this place to
well,
put all
the
the kids
Walmart
that
one
are
is
coming in?
probably. I bet the Walmart ones. I mean, we went there, and I think that they were keeping them open because they were going to go try to save these children. And after you go save the 350,000 children, you need somewhere to put them. Not all of them have families back home. Some of them, a lot of them, their family was kidnapped or killed by the cartels on the way here.
Right.
One of the stories, this little girl and her boy and his little boy and his sister were coming from Honduras, and by the time they got to Mexico, they had been robbed by the cartels. They took everything, and they happened to go one of the wrong routes, and they ran into some cartels. And the mother was really beautiful, and the cartel said, "Well, you owe us 5,000 to pass through here, and if you don't have it, you can work it off. We'll take your daughter and son, make sure they get to the border safely, where they'll be saved in a facility here, and they're going to get PlayStations and all this good stuff. But you can come down to Mexico and work off that debt. You have to go work in the red light district." The mother did, and the daughter and son got put on a train car. While in the train car, the cartels had their way with his sister, who was 14. She didn't survive, and then he ended up in America at his aunt's house. And the aunt told my buddy, who was the guy working at the NGO that delivered the kid, he said it was really weird. The kid was like super silent. He's like, "We're giving him ice cream, we're giving him iPads, we're giving him candy." Like, so most of the kids kind of open up to you and are talkative. He was basically just sitting there with his staring at the screen the whole time because he watched his sister pass away after she was abused by the gangbangers. And the mother was taken and pimped out in Mexico. So,
I mean, I can understand like the need for a facility, but now they know that from that facility, there's abuse happening within it. There's children being taken and flown around. Why isn't that being stopped if we know about that now?
that's a great question. That's probably the $1 million question. We don't understand. And they'll tell you that it's not, that we've forced these companies to make changes that prevent the migrants from, or the kids from being abused in their facilities, but there's no oversight. There's no checking. If they can cover it up internally, they'll cover it up internally. It's what they do. These things are evil. I think that we were sold a fake bill of goods with the Trump administration, right? I used to have, until yesterday, I put up the Charlie Kirk photo, but I used to have Trump's autograph photo back there. I was at every one of his rallies. I wasn't at everyone, but I was at a lot. I was at his house at Mar-a-Lago for the premiere of Dinesh D'Souza's Police State documentary. And I thought we were all on the same team. I thought our mission was to save women and children and save America. And you can't serve two masters. So this war and these wars overseas, it just seem like they're big distractions. Anytime a war starts, Trump's got to be the one to end the war, when it has nothing to do with us. Like, you should be focused on America. Our country's falling apart. Our infrastructure is collapsing. People can't afford single family homes. Most parents are working 2 jobs. They can't keep a roof over their kids' heads. They're missing they're missing soccer practice. They're missing basketball practice. They're missing the ballets because they have no choice but to be a debt slave. And your solution to this is 50-year mortgages and shut your mouth. If you speak up or you disagree with anything that I say, you're not MAGA. Like, that's the best you got. The Epstein list is a hoax. Like, what would you expect from an administration who's literally trying to tell you that the Epstein list is a hoax?
Yeah, or
Guess
we have the opposition just obsessing over identity politics or abortion, just whatever the inflammatory issue of the day is, instead of focusing on these bigger issues that the people actually care about or should care about.
Yeah, divide and conquer. It's a tactic that they've used relentlessly. And I think we are starting to wake up to it. I think you are starting to see that this thing, like, if you're left, you're a Democrat, like, I don't care what who you are. I mean, I don't want you to take possession of my child. I don't want any government to ever have the right to take my child away. So, like, I definitely disagree a lot with a lot of things that you have. But I think a majority, if we had free and fair elections here in America and our elections weren't rigged, we wouldn't have these problems. But our politicians no longer have to serve us. You have Trump endorsing Lindsey Graham and attacking MTG. Like, in what universe did we come from where Lindsey Graham is MAGA and MTG is the enemy? I don't get it. I don't understand it. I don't think I ever will. But I think it's starting to show the people, like, now the left used to call Marjorie Greene this radical lunatic And now she's over on pretty much every podcast over there. She's also on the right wing podcast because she's saying it just like, hey, we want $1.29 gas. We want mean tweets to come back, right? Like what happened to the glory days in 2016? I don't get mean tweets and I don't have $1.29 gas. Like that's what MAGA was, right? I wanted Trump shit posting on Twitter and roasting people and just exponentially making our life better while he did it. And instead, he's came back with a new agenda, which just seems with this Israel first, America last. And if you're not first, you're last, right? So it's that simple, right? If you can't put Israel before us, and Tucker Carlson was doing this interview with this gentleman. He's really like a big shot in Washington, never politically famous, but this guy was like the kingmaker, like the Susie Wiles, right? Like when he made moves and made predictions, like he knew because he had intel, he was meeting with the right people. And he goes, so in your basically 40 years, have you ever one time ever seen a situation come up where our government had to take a vote, right? And there was something that was really going to be beneficial for America, but it wasn't going to benefit Israel at all. And if Israel opposed it, have you ever seen a time where the politician said, well, sorry, Israel, screw you. We're going to do what's best for America and our citizens. And the guy sits there and he goes, oh, no, I can't say I have. He goes, well, that doesn't sound very America first, does it? He's like, well, he's like, no, that's not how this works, right? It's either you're either going to be willing to do what's needed to be done for your citizens to benefit them, no matter what any other country thinks. And if you're not willing to do that and you've never done it once in 40 years, then the problem's much bigger than I think we all can really wrap our heads around.
Mm-hmm. I'm starting to get the feeling that there are very well-meaning politicians. I had a lot of faith in Trump actually when he came in. I was on board with everything that he said that he was going to do. He did do some of it, but then he started to slowly change. And then I think what happens once you get into that system, you realize they're all corruptible, and not because they're bad people necessarily, but there's real drivers of the agenda, like pushing people a certain way. And maybe once you get into those positions, you realize that there's actually not much you can do.
Trump's the most powerful man in the world, and he could do anything, right? He could end this and all of this so easily if you really wanted to actually go after it. But the politicians, it doesn't matter who we vote for because our intelligence agencies can compromise anybody. Mm-hmm. So China used to be really good at this before technology got so advanced, and they just probably have access. But before, to tap somebody's phone, you had to get within a certain distance of them, right? So what the Chinese Communist Party would do is they would rent a house next to you, wherever, whatever millionaire lived, or they buy a house in the same neighborhood as, let's just say Kash Patel, or no, we'll use a politician. Let's just say they wanted to compromise Matt Gaetz, right? So you buy a house next to Matt Gaetz, you have access to every email, every phone call, every text message, every porn that he watches. You know exactly what he's into, what he likes to drink, how he likes to have fun. And you just wait for him to get into a fight with his girlfriend, or you wait for him to go out for a night with his boys. And you have his perfect, by the porn he watches, exactly what type of girls that he's into and what things that he likes. And you have this girl who, she works for you. She's one of her spies or a honeypot. And she goes into the club, same club you're in, happens to bump into you and starts a conversation. And every politician thinks they're God's gift to earth. So you have a few drinks. Next thing you know, she invites you back to her place, or you invite her back to your place. And next thing you know, you end up the next day with a throbbing headache, and you wake up and you're looking around and there's a manila folder and a cell phone. And you open up that manila folder, and inside of it is photos of you and a minor child in bed together. Whether you did anything with them or not, you don't necessarily know. You don't think you would, but you're blacked out. You have no idea what happened. You can't remember a thing. Your head's throbbing. And now there's photos of you in compromising positions with children. Mm-hmm. And I've also heard other stories where they bring politicians. Allegedly, Bernie Sanders was brought into a basement. There's this 14-year-old girl and a 12-year-old boy, and they had an iPad. And on the iPad was a video of Bernie's family playing in his front yard. And they said, you're either going to do this to this little boy right now, or we're going to kill your family. You don't walk out of here without doing this and them being alive. And we don't play around. And then Bernie was supposed to allegedly had his way with this little boy. And the girl said, he was like, I've never seen a grown man cry so hard. And that's what Bernie was literally sobbing as he had to do this to this little boy. And then after that, you're broken and they own you. Mm-hmm. And you'll do whatever. I mean, pedophilia is literally the only thing in the world that is so heinous and so horrific that you would swallow a bullet before you let your family find out about it. Mm-hmm. And that's the only way you keep operations at this scale in play. Look at the Anthony Weiner laptop, for example. When you hear Sidney Powell talk about that, she's one of the only people left alive that's seen it. And the 6 cops that were throwing up when they watched what was on. It was so graphic and so horrific, whatever Anthony Weiner was doing and he had his life insurance folder. Whatever was in that folder was so horrific that, the cops were puking when they seen it. And all 6 of them had magically died from deaths, heart attacks in the middle of the night, mm-hmm. car accidents, suicides that don't look like suicides. Kind of like the same thing with like the Las Vegas shooting, right? There was whatever 30 eyewitness victims, something crazy like that, are 18, and like all 18 have magically died since the Las Vegas shooting. Every eyewitness that said they saw a second shooter or they knew that there was a second shooter. My friend Mindy Robinson did a documentary called Route 91 on the Las Vegas shooting. If you've never seen it, it's over on Rumble. It's definitely worth a watch. It's mind blowing.
Is your film pointing fingers at any one source? And maybe we need to watch it to find out. And how risky is it actually producing this kind of work?
You met me in El Salvador because I was afraid to market this documentary and be in America. It wasn't finished, and I didn't want to, and I needed to start marketing it. So I ended up going to El Salvador just to be out of the country while I got it finished. And then I distributed it to 6 or 7 people now, one of them being including to be Candace Owens. So Candace Owens now has a copy of my film. So even if they killed me, you're not stopping this film from coming out. If you killed me, it'd probably make it the most viral film of our generation. So definitely, I'm definitely very careful. I try to not, I try to keep my films under wraps. Like, it would be so beneficial for the last 90 days to be promoting this film and talking about it and sharing clips from it. But that's how you end up dead. So I just kind of keep my shit under wraps until like a week before, 2 weeks before the film's releasing. I talk about it a little bit. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm making a documentary on this, but I don't really give any details. I don't tell anybody about how awesome it's going to be or whatever. And then I just come when it's ready. I just come out. I just relentlessly like beating the pavement. I have. So this week alone, I have how many? Today I have interviews from 7 a.m. or sorry, from 9 a.m. My flight lands at 8:15, and then I'm going to hide away for a little bit while this film releases, and then I have interviews from basically 9 a.m. till 11 p.m. And then the next day again from 8 or 9 a.m. all the way until probably 11 p.m. at night for the next 3 days. I'm going on a podcast circuit. I'll probably do 30 to 60 podcasts this week alone. And hopefully that your audience sees it and then they just go and they share this documentary. That's all I ask. It's going to be on X exclusively for the first 48 hours. So today's Monday, tomorrow's Tuesday. Wednesday, it'll probably be on YouTube if they'll let it stay. Rumble for sure. But X is the main platform where it's all about engagement. So every time you put out a tweet, that tweet has a scorecard attached to it. And then that's cross-referenced with basically how your channel performs. So you'll have this little algorithm type, but likes are worth 1 point. Comments are worth 2 points. A quote tweet's worth 5 points. Sorry, a retweet's worth 5 points. A quote tweet's worth 10 points. A bookmark's worth 15 points. Comments worth 31 points. And then a reply to a comment is worth 151 points. Wow. So if you guys see this video and you can open up somebody's comment or respond to somebody's comment, that's more powerful than 151 likes. Wow. So I'm going to really try to put this one out. I got the clean thumbnail, so it's not going to be anything like child exploitative or graphic or aggressive. It's just of the family that had their child kidnapped by a CPS, and CPS is the real animal. So the whole time I was doing this documentary on the children through HHS, these were just the migrant children. And I couldn't understand how this machine, they went from never dealing with children to all of a sudden within the first 60 days, they vanished 20,000 children. First 2 years, 85,000 children. By the fourth year, it was 350,000 children. I was like, how do they figure this out and get this machine steamrolling and operating and firing on all cylinders? And it wasn't until, basically 3 months ago when a guy reached out and he's like, hey, Ryan, you want to do an interview? I hear you talking about child trafficking. If you ever want to talk about CPS, let me know. And I'm like, actually, I put out a clip of somebody from a documentary I saw or just some news clip I thought I saw. And I said, hey, I don't know who this guy is, but I want to interview him. Who is he? And the next day, my DMs were like, oh, that's Diego Rodriguez. You got to interview this guy. That was Baby Cyrus's grandpa. Baby Cyrus is the most famous CPS case of all time. And so I talked to him and I'm like, hey man, I want to come down and do an in-person interview with this story. It's pretty big. You can do great interviews via podcast, but in person, it's just a different type of vibe, right? And then I was like, if I use any of those clips for the documentary that I make in the future, it'd be great to just get it out of the way now. I don't have to come back to Florida. I said I was flying down there, and everything's God, right? I told you how I lost my job at 6:45, and then at 7:03 I got my job, right? And then first week on the job, whistleblowers comes forward. God knows my talent and was like, yes, you're the perfect vessel to go and be the voice for these children. So again, I was like, after my fourth documentary, I'm done with films with the children. You can only be in this world for so long before it just takes a toll on you, right? And I just wasn't getting any results. I'm just pissing in the wind. I'm risking getting myself killed. I'm risking not being here for my son. And my films aren't helping anyone. Nobody's getting held accountable. Nobody's getting arrested. What the hell is going on? So I'm scheduled to go down there. And he's like, yeah, actually, they're come Monday because we had a Netflix crew coming in here. They're coming to film a documentary and my whole family's coming down. And they're going to interview us all and blah, 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 blah. It's okay, cool. So it was Friday. And I think I was in El Salvador at the time. And he's like, hey, man, is there any way we can cancel, reschedule? He's like, we just had the Netflix documentary company. They backed out and they must have got a call. And somebody's like, no, we're not making a documentary on this. You need to drop it. So they basically dropped it. And he's like, or you can come here and interview my whole family if you want. And I'm like, really? You got them all there? He's like, yeah, they'll stay till Monday if you're going to come down. I'm like, let's do all interviews back to back to back. So I went down And I heard this story and I was just like, I mean, the wheels were just spinning in my head as I'm hearing it. I'm like writing the script for the documentary in my mind. I came home in like 24 hours and just banged out the script, went and recorded all these videos, got it out to my editor as soon as possible. And it's just like pretty crazy. It's an insane story. When you hear, I mean, let me show you this. Let me show you the thumbnail so you can see the family. They're literally your perfect all-American family that you just like, I couldn't believe. How do I do photo? Title of this thing, Spanish news.
I don't know what it's like in the States, but I watched the little trailer that you sent me, and it's wild to think of their reasons for taking this child away. When I think of the horrific conditions that a lot of children live in here and in some local families where they're not treated well at all, and those kids are still there. Like, they're pretty resistant to take kids out.
Yeah, 100%. And this is I mean, does that look like a family where you need the government to come and rip one of their children out of their arms? No, it's insane. And do you have Rumble?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so at the end of this, let's play my trailer for the documentary. I got it ready. And then you can leave that. You can cut that out and put that only on Rumble. That way your audience can swing over there and check it out and see it. Because once you see this trailer, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I got to watch the documentary.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, just let me know whenever you're ready to switch over and we can do that right at the end.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, that's kind of the
Cool.
story. They're just like, the government has so much power that, if the system wants your child, they're going to get your child. And luckily her grandpa, the grandfather, was a pastor for 12 years. And their uncle, Eamon Bundy, was running for governor of Idaho at the time. So when they took the child, they had 1,000 people outside of that hospital and within pretty much 24 hours protesting. And they didn't leave. They did it for like 4 days out there. And then finally they got the word that they were going to get their child back. It took 8 days. And they got their kid back and it had pricks in its arm, in its hand. It was just IVs, but they don't know. They have no idea what fluids. They have no idea what food. They have no idea what medicine was injected into their child. And then when you live in a country with a constant fear that your government can come take your child at gunpoint, you don't really have freedom. You're not really a sovereign individual.
There was a similar story here. Her name was Willow. She was in the hospital. She didn't want to do the procedure that the hospital was saying needed to be done. She had good reason for believing so. And she left the hospital, and the hospital put an Amber Alert on her, which is like our system of identifying stolen children, for her taking her own child out, and has since faced like criminal charges, huge fines, an Amber Alert for her just taking home her own child. I wish I didn't have to feel like this about government organizations or even the hospital. My little one needed her appendix out recently, and I was terrified after the last 5 years. I don't trust what they're putting in her. I don't trust the surgeons, the doctors. I hate that. I hate that we can't trust a hospital.
If you don't physically sign on those documents saying, I do not want these vaccines, when you're going under for anesthesia, if you are not up to date on all of your vaccines, they will vaccinate you while you're out, which is insanity to me. And your government is injecting you with some type of chemical cocktail, and they won't even release the ingredients to you.
That's where we're at.
So it's not a far leap to say that your government's running the world's largest kidnapping operation, which is CPS.
So
98% of the children, but according to human trafficking search.org, 98% of children who were sex trafficked survivors had previous involvement with the child welfare system. Out of the reported missing children who are likely sex trafficking victims, 60% were in the foster care or group homes when they ran away. At least 85% of all commercial sexually exploitation of children, so all the child porn in New York, 85% of the porn that they found, child porn, the children that were on it had a history with the child welfare system here in America. So whatever they think they're doing, taking your child, they are not putting them into a better environment. Because obviously the other remaining 15% would probably have came from normal parents that didn't go through the foster care system.
And because this is so deep, the only tool, I guess, that we have at our disposal is just shedding light as much as we can spread out documentaries like this as humanly possible, because they can't shut down everyone at the same time.
100%. That's the name of the game. I learned that the hard way, trying to do it by myself without the network of podcasts. I'm not going to get the attention from the mainstream media. I'm not going to get the attention from our government. I'm not going to get the support from anybody except for we the people. It's you guys that have really, my other film, it's funny you say Amber Alert, because my films are called Operation Amber Alert. So this is Never in America. I went with a different title because I was getting so censored with the Operation Amber Alert films. But this should have been Operation Amber Alert CPS, but the title's too blacklisted.
At least you have a little bit more free speech than we do. We're looking down the barrel of censorship bills that not only land you in prison, get you banned from the internet as well. So I've been using this platform as much as humanly possible while I still can before these very dystopian bills pass. But they know
Where are you
that
at?
I'm in central Canada, in Ontario.
That's the worst of the worst.
Nothing says you can trust us, like we're going to take away your access to information.
That's insane.
It is insane. And people are so brainwashed by mainstream media, they think it's a good idea. They're like, oh, well, we have to stop the online hate, that we're seeing on Twitter, or it's actually being phrased as a way to protect immigrants, to protect children from things like online pornography. It's done to shut down independent journalism, is what it's being used for.
But you can go buy crack cocaine in a vending machine
Yeah, you
with an
can.
instruction video. And you can take your own life at a hospital if you feel like you broke up with your girlfriend and you have a heartbreak.
They give that to children and people that are mentally ill as well now. It's cheaper. They save a lot of money. Mm-hmm.
That's insanity.
It is.
I can't believe it's and the people are just going to let it happen. That's why I say America's cooked. That's why I say America is beyond saving. It can't be saved. It's the West's downfall will be because we could not cut ties with Israel. Cutting ties with Israel under the Trump administration was the last hope we had at saving our country and saving Western civilization as a whole. We could have been the leader. We could have been shutting down trade with Canada if they passed these speech bills. But instead, they don't need America anymore. And China is more than happy to deliver everything that you need. Because they are happy if you destroy yourself and you just let China buy up. And who wouldn't be? Like if our government acted like China and to the rest of the world, we'd be filthy rich. Their citizens are thriving. They bought 350 million citizens out of poverty in the last 15 years. China has. Right? We've brought out 20,000 or 20 million, but we've put 18 million into poverty. So we're net plus 2 million, and China's net 315 million. And those citizens are doing well. They're traveling overseas. They're starting businesses in other countries. And China's thriving. All they have to do is just give their 15% or 20% to the Chinese Communist Party. They don't care if you leave. America, you got to give like 40%. You have to pay an exit tax, and then of like 50%. And then you have to pay, still give them like 30% or whatever. It's like insane. It's like,
yeah,
your best bet is leaving America, renouncing your US citizenship, and being a free citizen in whatever country that you choose to live in. That's why I was in El Salvador. I mean, that's what, like you can't live in a country that you're getting taxed to death by a government that hates you.
we're hopeful. One, like just of America and like America's spirit, that is very different than any other nation. And there are massive problems right now, tsunami of problems. But I'm a big history buff. And when I look at past history, when people think, oh, it's never been so bad, I look at times like the plague. I look at the fall of the Soviet Union. So my personal belief is we're in it. Like we're in a valley, but just one person can do a lot of damage. Look, Canazoans, that's one person. Napoleon, one person. Look at El Salvador. You would have said that situation was hopeless a few years ago. El Salvador gives me a lot of hope for the rest of the world. Just to see like a country like that on the up and up, it's possible. It's possible. I feel like these problems are in lots of different places. I agree. The West is in trouble, but we still have strong tools like the media. I always joke, one person woke me up. That was one person that woke me up, and I'm a big problem. I've been working with a lot of big organizations. So yeah, I think there's still a chance.
Hope you're right. I pray you're right. And that's what I do every day. I pray, but I'm also I'm doing what's needed to do to make sure that if it doesn't, that my family is not going down with the Titanic. Because I feel like the
100%.
United States, America is the Titanic. We've hit the iceberg. And all the politicians that are on the boat, they sent their armed guards to guard their life rafts while they were running around stealing the gold silverware off the tables, and they're stealing the jewelry out of your room. And they're telling you just to wait down below and everything's going to be fine. Trust us. We're the government. We're here to help. We're just out there securing the lifeboats for you. And you're out there like, well, why do they need the keys to my room for to secure a lifeboat? And like, this isn't making sense. And you're like scratching your head like this stuff doesn't. And like I feel like the waters, I feel like the ships get going underwater like this. I don't think we should be under in the hull of the ship. But they've told us to trust us. It's okay. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, guys, there's still time for us. Like there's still actually enough lifeboats for us that aren't being guarded to go get on. We can go get on those lifeboats and we can get our families to safety. And then we can come back and trust the government after. But like, let's make sure that our family's safe first. And then we can rage against the machine. So
100%. We're set up like Mad Max over here, just in case too.
Yeah. But how long till the government comes and kills your farm animals because they're dangerous?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Then we come out swinging.
Yeah, good. I hope so. I hope everybody
Guns,
realizes
guns,
it.
gold, and Bitcoin.
I'm here for
That's
the
all I got.
revolution.
Ryan, where can people see your new film?
You can actually see it over on X right now. It just dropped today. Again, if you guys could just swing down there in the comments, I'm at Ryan Matta Media. It'll be pinned up to the top of my profile. So if you just search Ryan Matta Media, you'll find me. I'll be up there at the top. And then you can probably find it in a couple days over on Rumble. We're going to give a shot. Rumble's just Ryan Matta. YouTube will be Ryan Matta News over on, Ryan Matta Media, Ryan Matta News over here. The same profile picture that I have on X is the profile picture where all my films will be. So you guys can find it that way. All right.
Well, my friend, light is the best medicine, the best disinfectant. So hopefully we are able to assist you in spreading this far and wide. And I'm sure my listeners will as well. Really appreciate your time here today and can't wait to watch this film.
Carla, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you. And I love what you guys are doing over at your the Sovereign CEO studio. So thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you, Ryan. Thank you.
God bless you.